I'm Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's the author of the book Thanks to Life, a biography of Violeta Parra, no other than Miss Erica King Verba. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Erica, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Certainly, I'm happy to. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It means a lot to me. My name is Erica Verba. I'm actually a historian, a professor of Latin American history, and now the biographer of Violeta Parra. And I've just briefly, I'm a director of Latin American studies at Cal State LA. That's what I do. And I'm also the author of this book, and it's about a Chilean artist named Violeta Parra, who is truly multifaceted. She was both an amazing songwriter and composer, and also a visual artist. So she created these vast tapestries and also these tiny oil paintings. She's just very versatile. I would say a creative genius. And the book is named after her most famous songs. Maybe some of your listeners know it already. Thanks to Life in Spanish, Gracias a la Vida. And that's been recorded by literally hundreds of musicians, but I'll just name a few that maybe your audience knows. Joan Baez, the American folk singer, Mercedes Sosa, an Argentine folk singer, Omar Portuanda, who's Cuban from the Buena Vista Social Club singer. And then more recently, Yo Yo Ma recorded a cello instrumental version of it during COVID, and that he put on a CD that was to kind of soothe us all during this difficult time.
That's awesome. So, Miss Erica Verba, thank you so much for sharing your talents with the world. Hoping for more books to come. So, what is the central theme of Thanks to Life, a biography of Violeta Parra?
Well, I think the theme, obviously it's about Violeta, this wonderful artist,
Yes.
and I think the question I'm trying to answer, if you read the biography, you'd find out right in the beginning she's from a tiny little town called San Carlos in the south of Chile. She's one of 10 children, not particularly a wealthy or established family. Her father's a school teacher. Her mother was comes from a rural background, agricultural worker, and she becomes this sort of national and international icon. So my book tries to understand how a woman could come travel so far in her lifetime, and then also of course her legacy really lives on to this day, because people sing her songs all over Latin America and really all over the world. Gracias a la Vida has been translated. I'm sorry, the song Gracias a la Vida, which is thanks to life in English, has been translated into 14 different songs. It's sung in different languages. And I think that's really what my biography, this book that I've written, tries to answer is this puzzle. How does a woman from such a small town in the south of Chile, which, if you look on the map of, it's sort of she described it herself as at the end of the world. She came from the end of the world, and here she
Chile.
is getting,
Oh,
well, from the south of Chile. So again, from the end of the world, she called it. That's how
that.
she described her town, as the end of the world.
So, Miss Erica, how does the biography capture the cultural and historical context of its subject's life?
Well, that's a great question as well. And I really like it because a lot of times when someone is so, again, amazing or creative or inspiring, people both now and certainly when she was alive, they'd like to say that she was ahead of her times, right? And I really, one of the points that I love to make in the biography is she was absolutely of her times. She was just a leader, you know, of her times. And so, for example, in the 1950s, before she becomes this amazing creator, before that, she's what you call a folklorist. She would go around and collect these old songs. Chile has this incredible folkloric tradition, and we could collect these songs and this poetry, this oral poetry, and she recorded them. She's said to have collected like over 1,000 songs. And this is just at the moment when those songs are being forgotten. So it's very important because once radio comes in and records and television, the songs stop being passed down and people just start, learning whatever's on the radio, right? So she's getting them just in time.
Yes.
And um and so sh- but she's not alone. That's a time in the world really where like in Argentina, Chile, France, United States, England, all over the world, people are realizing that these songs are disappearing. So there's kind of a folk boom in all of these countries, or a folk revival. So she's actually of her time, she's just leading it. And then in the 60s she starts writing her own songs, and they're absolutely phenomenal. Some of them are love songs, and some of them are also protest songs. Think of Bob Dylan, Woody Guthrie. She's of that generation, and so she's also of her times. Then that's what people are doing. They have a word for it. One scholar who wrote about it, because I guess every country at that time had their Bob Dylan. Like Chile's Bob Dylan was Victor Jara, who was later killed by the military coup, but military government. So every country had their songwriter who was like our Bob Dylan here in the United States. France would have had Georges Brassens. So she's of that time period. And this one scholar, he dubbed them the guitar poets. Like they're the people that go around with their guitar and sing these long songs that are actually poetry, but also protest music. And she was one of those as well. So she really was of her times, I would say, and also really reflected the historical moment. Like it makes sense in the 50s that people wanted to go and collect folklore because it was dying. And it made sense in the 60s. I mean, think about the 60s. It's sort of this explosion of possibilities. And it makes sense that the songs would reflect that as well.
Definitely. So I just want to shout out the people listening in Chile,
Oh,
because in Santiago Metropolitan I got 82% audience share.
wow.
Region de Valparaiso 6%, Antofagasta 6%, and Region de del Biobio
Pues
6%.
bienvenidos a todos los chilenos que están escuchando este
Yes.
podcast. Me alegro mucho,
Muchas gracias,
de verdad.
Chile. Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to greet also the people listening in Spain, because they are all Spanish. Muchas gracias, because I have a lot of places in Spain: Andalusia, Madrid, Catalonia, Valencia, Navarre, Galicia, Castilla de Leon, and a lot more. Thank you. Muchas gracias for listening to this podcast. And
Sí,
of course,
pues.
yes, according to my analytics, I have 154 countries listening to this podcast, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. So, Miss Erica, what inspired you to write this biography?
I really appreciate that question, because this biography has been a long time coming. I would say it's been a dream of mine for a long time, and it really, really started when I was in high school. Went to high school in a suburb of Boston called Brookline, and it was pretty dull, like most suburbs of Boston probably were at the time. And when I was in sophomore year, a family of Chilean refugees came to our town, and they were very interesting people. The mother was actress, so I got to see my first Bertolt Brecht play. She was the lead in a play called The Mother. The father was studying education, but radical education. And the kids, who of course were my age, were artists, and they played music and they played the guitar. And in particular, the kids that were my age, my friend Miguel was very, very angry because he had been uprooted from his home because of a military coup that happened on September 11th, 1973. I met him in 1974. And he was angry, and also angry, obviously, at the US government because we had helped fund this military coup. And I remember I didn't know anything about any of this. I didn't know the music. I didn't know also the politics. So it all came together with me. It's like, how is it that I don't know this? Um, and I became very curious about it and learned my first Violeta Parra songs from this family. And just to share like one anecdote to sort of show you what the moment was like, the family had left Chile and they wanted to smuggle out some of the protest music that was happening in Chile before the coup, before this military coup. And to be very clear, the military coup was violent and very repressive. So they would there's these images, they look like Nazi Germany. They took books and they took records and they made bonfires in the streets. So my Chilean friends had smuggled out records. And the way that they did was that they went out and they bought brand new military band marching music. And then they put the protest albums into the record sleeves. And then very carefully, they had ironed the records shut. So it looked like no one had ever opened them. And that's how they smuggled the music out of the country. So I think that was very life changing for me. And from there, I went on to become a musician. I sang Violeta Parra songs for years. Continued to sing it. At our book launch, we're going to be singing together the same songs we've been singing with friends of mine for years now. And I also just became fascinated with this woman, with her poetry, with her artwork, with everything. And so I've kind of been thinking about, writing about, singing about Violeta Parra for decades now. And this book is really a culmination of all of that interest and curiosity. And I would also like to say it's very much a collective project because so many people helped me along the way. It's been quite beautiful to be able to acknowledge them as well.
Definitely. So, Miss Erica, what would be your advice for those people out there want to write their novel or write their biography or memoir?
Well, I love that question. And I think, my hat's off to novelists, fiction writers, because I think they're the bravest of all of us, and I think they create worlds, and my admiration to them, and more than advice, I would just say hats off to you. And memoirs, the same thing. I think people are very brave to share. I'm sharing with you now, but writing a memoir is a whole other beast. And so again, my admiration. And for people like myself who write nonfiction, um, I think my advice would be, uh, I guess my advice or the principles that I followed were to try to be honest. Because what happens is you'll be going this one way and everything's fitting together, and then you'll get a piece of information that just completely throws you off because it's not doesn't fit with whatever you're trying to argue or what you're trying to figure out. It's like, oh, that came out of the blue. And I think it's really important not to ignore that. Sometimes the best I think you get to a deeper understanding of your subject when you're not afraid to look at the contradictions. And I really had to in the case of Violeta Parra because her life is full of contradictions. And so I had to kind of admit that that was part of her story, in fact, that she could be a very contradictory person. That this song "Gracias a la Vida," thanks to life. It's a song she wrote in the last years of her life, and she thanks everything. She thanks the elements, the stars, her feet that are tired, but they brought her to the mountains and the oceans, and the colors, and her sight and sounds and everything. And then the same year, she writes a song called "Maldigo del Alto Cielo." I curse the sky above. And in that song, she curses everything. She curses the number seven, and the color yellow, and the mountains, and everything that she gave thanks to. So contradictions again, and that really becomes part of, well, anyone who understands or tries to understand Violeta Parra recognizes that she had both those highs and the lows.
So, what are your short term and long term goals in writing?
Well, this book took a long time. And as I mentioned before, I am director of Latin American studies. So I did write it I did have a full time job while I was writing it. I was very, very fortunate. For 1 year, I did get the National Endowment of the Humanities grant. So I actually was able to write for a year, which was phenomenal, research and write. And I guess maybe I'm a slow writer too. Like I really like to mull things over and do a lot of drafts and organize things. Towards the end of one way I would describe the book that I wrote is like a quilt because you have all of these different pieces and you try to find the right way to put them together. And so I really enjoyed the quilting part. And when you say what I'm going to write next, I think I'm going to actually spend some time doing what I'm doing now, which is try to let the world know that I wrote the book, so that I didn't do it for nothing, and so that people know there is a book out there. It's a biography of Violeta Parra. I'm trying to tell the world why I think people should read it, and hopefully that works, and people do start reading it, and that would be exciting. And more importantly, that people begin to know who Violeta Parra is. That means the world to me. And if I were going to write another book, I think I might have kind of a biography itch right now. So, if there was someone else I would love to write the biography of, it would be Chabela Vargas, this wonderful Mexican singer. So, but I'm not promising anything. I want to let this one breathe first, breathe in the world.
Good luck to your goal, Miss Erica. So, what are the most notable achievements highlighted in the biography?
Well, I would say her songs for sure. I was very fortunate to have two friends, Nancy Morris and Patricia Vilches. One is from the United States, the other's from Chile. Do the translations of Violeta Parra's songs and poetry for my book, the parts that I quote. And they really did a fantastic job making their translations also poetic. So I think that people and the Spanish is there, the original Spanish is there as well, so people can really enjoy this incredible language that she's just such a beautiful storyteller and poet. So that's in the book, and that's I think more importantly one of her most amazing accomplishments. And she was also a visual artist, and she didn't come to being a visual artist until late in life. She had hepatitis. I guess she was 42. She had hepatitis and she was bored and she was in bed, and the doctor wouldn't let her get out of bed. So she started embroidering. And since she was stuck in bed, she embroidered on whatever she had, burlap sacks or sheets that she took off their kids' beds, and yarn. She was very, very adamant woman. And bits of yarn. And she made these amazing tapestries. And about within 5 years of her beginning to 5 or 6 years from this, she ended up showing her tapestries in the Museum of Decorative Arts in Paris, which is actually housed in the Louvre Palace. And I don't know if your listeners have seen the pictures of the Louvre Palace, but it is palatial. So everyone just said that she showed what she did. She showed her tapestries in the Louvre. And so how many people can both boast of writing songs that are still sung today by so many different musicians? I forgot to mention Casey Musgrave, who's a very famous country western singer, has recorded her songs. She was I forgot her from the list. How many people can boast that they wrote those kinds of songs that endure, and also have tapestries that are shown in the Louvre Palace? And I think recently they were shown at the Venice Biennial, which is a very famous art show, international art show, and there was Violeta Barra's tapestry. So, I think most of us would be happy if we wrote one or two songs that were like other people would want to sing. And here's a woman who's done so much in her life. So she accomplished many things.
Yes, for sure. So, how does the biography explore the subject's lasting legacy?
Well, actually, that would be my next book, more likely. My this book is more about how she came to even um, suc- to how she became who she was, right? She wasn't that well known during her life. She really, I guess, well, she committed suicide, and like many artists, she became more well known after her death and even after her suicide, right? That's when everyone went back and said, "Wait, what did we miss here?" And with tremendous regret, that they weren't able to support her while she was alive. Better support her. So there's the legacy is really ongoing. I think people are still beginning to only now, at least in the English speaking world, beginning to realize who she is. Although it's really been you know growing exponentially, I think, since her death. Um, so her legacy is profound. Her songs are sung by student movements in Chile to this day. I heard they were sung in Ukraine during the Orange Revolution in the early part of the century, sort of symbolically. So her legacy is strong. I don't know. My book, talks about her legacy at the end, but I would say my book is more about how does a woman. My book tries to answer the question of how a woman from the south of Chile is able to do all these things, because she could have stayed in the south of Chile, right? So,
Mm,
why,
yes.
what is that pathway? What is that trajectory that makes her Violeta Parra, and not just some woman in the south of Chile? She loved to say that too. She loved to say, "Oh, I could be just like any woman. I could be, at home peeling the potatoes, taking care of the kids, but I had a guitar, so I went out to sing."
Definitely. So, how does the biography structures or narrative style enhance the story?
Well, biographies are kind of funny because easiest way to explain someone's life is to be chronological. So it's almost like the structure. It's, I guess, the biggest structure challenge is not the order of events, because again, biographies make the most sense, I think, if you are chronological.
Yes.
So the structural challenge I think in writing a biography is literally it sounds silly, but and this is kind of the quilting part of it. Where are the chapters? Like what are the chapters of her life? And how does one divide someone's life into chapters? In a way, we're trying to make something um, I don't know how cohesive life is. We know where it starts and we know where it ends, and the middle can be, kind of it can be open to interpretation. And so
Yes.
I think that her life was very much open to interpretation. I mean, I can tell you the chapter outline. I got it down if you wanted to hear it at that level of detail. But I think that was my structural challenge, was to come up with what are the parts of her life that are kind of distinct. And because she did so many different things and took so many turns, I think it worked out pretty well. It was pretty easy to do. So that's I think that's really telling someone's life um, in a way that's cohesive and yet honors the contradictions. I would say that was my challenge, and a very welcome challenge. I really enjoyed it.
So, Miss Erica, to sum up our episode for today, why is the biography considered an important work in understanding the subject's contributions?
Well, partly because they're not here to speak for themselves anymore, although, of course, I use as many of her interviews as I can to try to understand her. Partly because many times, and especially in this case, Violeta Parra was a performer. So in a sense, she performed her life. So uh, like I'm reading interviews. Interviews are performances. I'm performing for you right now. I suppose we could say you're performing too for your listeners. So part of it is also to try to um, go behind the level of performance to see what motivates the performance. Are there other performances? Do performances contradict each other again? Who is she? Who is she trying to portray, and why is she trying to portray it at a certain time? Because of course she's historical, and you asked about that. So at one point she almost becomes a peasant, a campesina, or a peasant herself, when in fact she wasn't. She never worked the ground. That wasn't what she did. So sort of this, one of the themes of the book is also sort of the creation of Violeta Parra, or the self-creation, the self-construction. And I think that biographers can see that. Memoirs are your voice going out, right? Or her voice, in this sense, it would be her going out. Whereas a biography tries to really see, I guess, what's underneath that persona, and the complexity of people, and the relationships with other people. It's this kind of beautiful web of life, and I know that's what I was trying to create. To I don't Create's the wrong word for biography. Uncover and express.
Yes. Miss Erica Vera, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. And we are looking forward for more biographies or more empowering books to come. So, Miss Erica, can you please invite our listeners to support Thanks to Life?
Oh, please, yes, of course. You Please support my book. You can find out more about it at my website, which is ericaverba.com. How easy is that? And
Yes, yes, yes.
I
Where
look
books are sold, I think,
yes.
right?
You can also buy the book where books are sold. Absolutely. Thank you.
So, people, let's support Miss Erica Verba because if you support her, as I said, more empowering books to come. So, Miss Erica, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Take good care.
More to come, people. See you soon. So, Miss Erica, you are most welcome to come back if you have